Well, we are one day away from the end of 2024, which means that it is time for me to do an end of year wrap up. So, for this wrap up, I am planning to just talk about some of the stats that I have for the year, revisit the goals that I made at the beginning of the year, and just see how I did with them. And then talk about, in true wrap up fashion, things that I loved about this year, things that I learned from this year, and then wrap it all up by talking about my general goals moving into 2025. Beginning with, let's talk about stats. I had 3 goals at the beginning of this year. The first goal was to read 100 books. The second goal was to complete 4 readathons, so a quarterly readathon. And the third was to complete a full draft of my fantasy novel. If you've been here a while, you know how these goals have landed, but we're gonna go ahead and wrap it all up anyway. So, goal number 1, read 100 books. I did do this, and I'm very excited about it. So like I said at the beginning of the year, I know that 100 books isn't necessarily a large number for a lot of people that already do this professionally. I think most bookstagrammers, booktubers, people in the book social media community who make a living out of this or who do this full time or interact more actively on these platforms tend to read a higher number of books, usually over 100. I'm not that person. I do read a lot every year, but not this much. And so 100 is a number I've always wanted to hit. And this year I finally did it, which I'm very excited about. It was hard. It was very hard to do this. Being someone who does read a lot pretty often and tends to read above the goal that I set each year, I thought 100 books would be easy peasy, no problem. I would catch up when I caught up and it would be fine, and it was difficult. I was kind of down to the wire on finishing all these books, but I did it, which is very exciting. And overall, reading 100 books ended up totaling to 36,763 pages read, which is a very cool, very high number. So goal number 1, we did it, 100 books down. Usually I do a big Instagram post about this every year, so you can check my Instagram for that as well, but going over my top reads of the year and some of my honorable mentions, but I'm going to do it here as well. So my top 5 reads of the year were The Martian by Andy Weir, The Locked Tomb trilogy by Tamsin Muir. Guess it's not a trilogy, there's a 4th book coming out, but as of right now it's only 3 books. The Sword of Kaigan by M.L. Wang, The Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer, and the Poppy War trilogy by R.F. Kuang. These are all very closely tied. They all received very similar scores from me. I think most of them were a 4.5 or higher. The only one to receive a full 5 stars from me was The Martian, but it's still in my heart tied with some of these other reads. So those are my top 5. Other honorable mentions include Hogfather by Terry Pratchett, The Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells, and I should know this off the top of my head, His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman. Usually I just do this for fiction, but I'm also going to mention Garden City by John Mark Comer and Liturgy of the Ordinary by Tish Harrison Warren, both which are Christian living books, so not necessarily for a wider audience, but 2 books that really impacted me this year and that I wanted to readily recommend to everyone in my circle this year. So those 2 books as well. Moving on to goal number 2, which is to complete a readathon every quarter, coming out to 4 readathons total, which I also did. If you are just tuning in now and haven't seen, you can go to my channel and see all 4 readathons that I did this year. I did a vlog for each of them, but yes, I was able to do 4 readathons this year. It didn't necessarily come out to every quarter, but it was pretty close. Depending on my availability and just the timing of them, there were some that were really close together and others that were really spaced apart, so it wasn't quite every quarter, but I did complete 4 readathons. And those readathons accounted for 4,755 of those pages read for the year and about 15 books. Technically, it was 14 total, but I'm counting a 15th for all the other little snippets of books that I didn't quite finish within those readathons, but got close to finishing. So about 15, technically 14. Goal number 3, complete a full draft of my fantasy novel. No, this did not happen. It was frankly a little delusional of me to think that it was going to. Not because I don't think I'm capable, but because it just wasn't the year for it. And if you've been here for a minute, you know why that's the case. I started 2 drafts this year of my fantasy novel that I've been working on since high school. It was only near the end of July that I had an epiphany that it just wasn't the right time to be writing it, so I spent a lot of my year writing, but didn't complete a draft because I tried to start 2, didn't complete them for various reasons, and then the 3rd draft that I started of a new project, I wrote a lot towards because of NaNoWriMo, but I did not finish because it is going to be a longer project than I was expecting. Go figure with me, right? Should have seen that one coming. All said though, between those 2 failed drafts and starting a 3rd draft of a new novel at the beginning or at the end of this year, hi! Puppy is here. Oh, you gonna lay down and hang out? Hello. Anyway, all that said though, between those two failed drafts and then the draft of the new novel that I have just started back in November that I'm still working on, and with the short story that I wrote for my alma mater at the beginning of the year, I wrote 119,259 words this year. So even though I didn't complete this goal, I'm gonna call that a win. That's a lot of words written. Most of them, unfortunately, not usable, at least not right now, but I'm still happy with how much I accomplished and happy with the fact that I was able to switch gears where needed and approach a new project because I knew it was the right time for it. So like I do with my other wrap-up videos, I'm going to go ahead and talk about things that I loved doing this year with these goals and then things that I learned this year from working towards these goals. So things that I enjoyed. I loved getting to explore new stories, both in my reading and in my writing. I read so much this year and beyond the scope of what I was expecting to, and I was pleasantly surprised to find some new favorites and some new authors that I really want to read more of. And then in my own writing, I usually don't write short stories, but my favorite thing that I wrote this year was the short story that I wrote for my alma mater's literary journal. And I haven't worked much in the contemporary space, but that's the project I'm working on now, and it has rekindled my excitement for my writing in a way that my other projects haven't in a long time. So getting to explore storytelling in new spaces, both in my reading and my writing, has been just the most wonderful thing to come out of this year. And I've also loved getting to interact with my community, both online and in person. So many people checked in to see how these goals were going, how I was getting along with them, both in person from friends and family and online. And just getting to share this space with people who cherish the same stories that I do has been so special and such a lovely experience overall. I really wasn't sure about doing the YouTube thing at the beginning. It's something I've considered for years but have always put off, and the reason I started it was so that I had a way of keeping myself accountable and to document throughout the year how the goals were going and how I was progressing. But yeah, this was an unexpected joy to come out of it, getting to interact with all these people over storytelling, which has been just the loveliest surprise to come out of this year. And I've really appreciated everybody that has checked in and has reached out and made a connection with me because of the work that I am doing, even if it is in my own little small corner of the world here. And then moving on to things I learned, which is where we're going to spend the bulk of the time, because it was mostly lessons this year, not a lot of triumphs, a lot of failures, things that I learned from them, which is fine. First lesson is to slow down, which is something I've been saying all year, and you know, the advice is finally sinking in. It has been such a productive year, but I am so tired. It was a fun challenge to set really high goals and to reach for them and to work really hard towards them, but I think in the end it became more about meeting those goals than it did about appreciating and then learning from the process of trying to get to them, which was not the intention to begin with. I noticed this a lot more in my reading than in my writing. I think in my own writing I caught on to that more quickly, and I was able to adjust course and rearrange those goals and lessen those goals as needed. I still set some pretty lofty ones even as I was doing that, but I think I was more aware of this in my own writing than I was with the reading goal. And I noticed this especially in the reading goal because by the end it became so much more about meeting that 100-book goal than about enjoying the reading itself, that I found I was rushing it. I wasn't really savoring what I was reading. I made choices about what I was reading based on how close I was to my goal. So there's a lot of longer reads that I was really excited to try to get to this year that I ended up tabling because I knew it was going to make it so that I couldn't meet that 100-book goal. And I settled for a lot more short books that I was kind of interested in but not super excited about, just so I could meet that 100 books. So that is something I'm a little disappointed in, is the fact that I made it so much about reaching those goals in the end that I didn't necessarily savor or enjoy the process or what I was reading, and I didn't really become too aware of that until the last month or two. So that was a disappointment, something that I'm taking into consideration as I prepare to start the next year and look at my goals for that. I also continually beat myself up when I wasn't on track with my goals, which isn't the right idea, right? It's their goals. Like it's not my job. It's not the end of the world if I don't meet them. It's something that it's an expectation I've set for myself that isn't the end of the world if I don't meet, but I was treating it like it was going to be the end of the world if I didn't meet these goals. So yeah, that wasn't great either. And I've learned too that I produce better quality work both in my reflections on reading and in my own writing when I take my time with it, when I give myself the space to slow down and really lean into the process and not beat myself over the head with these arbitrary unnecessary deadlines. And deadlines are important to me. They always have been, and I'm always able to work within them. But those are deadlines for other people that I am now beholden to because I have agreed to something, not necessarily my own deadlines. I think I need to be more gracious with myself. Or I've learned this year that I need to be more gracious with my own deadlines because I tend to set goals with deadlines that are not necessarily realistic. And I am learning that about myself and trying to adjust accordingly. But yes, biggest lesson of this year is to slow down. Lesson number 2 is to be a part of my own life. So a big thing that I learned this year is I was getting frustrated with my responsibilities and feeling overwhelmed by doing worthwhile things like spending time with my family and my husband and investing in my dog's well-being and making time to hang out with friends. And while I certainly have an issue with saying no and overcommitting to a lot of things at once, I ended up in a place where I was bitter towards anybody that wanted my time. And it was people that I loved that wanted my time. And I didn't like that that's where I ended up, where I was starting to feel frustrated by people wanting to hang out or wanting to spend time with me or trying to make plans, because these are people I love that I want to spend time with and want to invest in. And I had reached a point where I would get frustrated and overwhelmed and bitter anytime anyone wanted to do something. And that's not the kind of person I want to be, and that's not the space I want to live in. And I found that when I took the time to be present and to appreciate what I had and to be grateful, my creativity was better for it anyway. Taking a moment to pause and be present and not focus in so much on the things I was trying to accomplish, I was a better writer and reader anyway when I took the space to do that. So that was something that was disappointing this year, was becoming that person and not recognizing it until later. And, you know, the frustration was already festering in there and I had to address it, and it was difficult to address it. So yeah, being present in your own life is important, and taking those moments to pause, again, leaning into the slow down lesson, you'll be better for it in the end. And that's something that I had to teach myself the hard way. Lesson number 3, failures are useful and necessary for growth. This is something that I've known forever, but I never actually hold myself to that lesson. I think it applies to everyone else but me. I have to be perfect, which is silly. Like we've already established, I didn't meet all my goals, but I learned so much more about myself as a writer from the failures than I did from the successes. And like I said, I really struggle with making mistakes. I'm very much a perfectionist, and having to readjust my goals and step back from the project of my heart that I tried to start twice and wrote so many words towards, it was disappointing and frustrating, but I learned a lot more when I let myself say, okay, that doesn't work and I need to readjust course and I need to be able to fix it from here, and I need to reevaluate my expectations and the way that I'm working towards this. Being able to accept that I'm not perfect and that I'm gonna have to learn as I go and that's necessary for growth was also an enormous lesson from this year. And it's also important to note that allowing myself the space to grow organically and to readjust those goals as I went, it worked better than forcing myself to work towards the goals with no grace. I found that I learned more and my work was better, and I felt more excited to work and to write when I was allowing it to be organic rather than forcing it. And there were days I still didn't want to write and I still didn't want to work towards these goals, but I felt more balanced and more disciplined in a good way when I was allowing myself the space to recognize those failures, learn from them, and move on, rather than just surging ahead and trying to force something to work that wasn't going to. So yeah, lesson number 3, failures are important and necessary for growth. And then moving on to lesson 4, final lesson, creativity needs breathing room. All these lessons are kind of tied together, but something that I learned was it was better for my creativity to rest, to play, to sleep, to daydream, to do other things that fostered my own emotional and mental health. My creativity was better for it when I did that versus when I was forcing myself towards burnout because I just wanted to get the goal done. There was a lot of moments this year where I was really feeling burnt out, and I felt silly for being burnt out because I don't work a ton. I was busy with a lot of stuff, but you know, beating myself up for not treating my work schedule like a full-time writer's when I'm not a full-time writer, when I'm still working towards that and trying to grow, and I'm still a newbie. Even though I've been doing this for years, I've not been doing it consistently for years. So not giving myself the space to be an amateur was worse than when I did give myself the space to be an amateur and recognize that my creativity just needs breathing room, and it'll grow in the small quiet moments as much as the moments when I'm really working towards my goals of being a better writer. Overall, the less I forced it, the better my creative brain worked. So taking all of these lessons into consideration, I want to transition into my goals for 2025. These are very loose goals, not trying to marry myself specifically to any one one particular goal. I have a couple of specificities for these goals to help me meet them, but I'm gonna be flexible, and this is more just a general idea of what I would like to expect from 2025 and things I'd like to work towards overall. So as far as reading goals, my idea is to read 25 books in 2025. We are going back down from 100 to half of what I typically read. In a normal year, I read about 50 books. So we're going to try for 25. I just like the ring of it. 25 books in 2025. Historically speaking, I will probably end up reading more than 25 books, but setting a lower goal gives me the space to tackle some of those longer reads that I wanted to get to this year that I didn't because they were longer. Gives me a chance to read some more classics again because I love reading the classics and I haven't done it for a few years now because I'm daunted by the time that it takes. I'm also making it a point within this to not be afraid of starting a series this year. So I've learned about myself that I am very much a series reader. I like standalones, but more often than not, I gravitate towards series. And there are so many series I want to read that I have put off for so long because the series themselves are super long. And I do that because I know about myself that once I start a series, chances are I'm going to buckle down and finish the whole thing. And so I've been avoiding a few of these series that I really want to read because there are so many installments and I'm intimidated and I don't necessarily want to sign off a year or two of my life to reading just one series at a time. But I'm trying to make it a point to not be scared of those series this year. No one's telling me I can't take a break. No one's telling me I have to finish these series start to finish in one go. No one but me is saying that. So I'm going to try to start some of the series that I have been avoiding because they are longer and read just one or two installments and be okay with taking a break and starting another one or doing some standalones in between because I shouldn't be scared of that. So that's another general goal that I want to work towards, is not being afraid of starting longer series just because they're longer. And all this together will hopefully allow for me to be more intentional about my book reviews. That was something that fell off by the end of the year because I just couldn't keep up. I was trying to read so many things so quickly that I couldn't really gather my thoughts to have anything useful or worthwhile to say about what I was reading. So slowing the pace will hopefully allow me to produce better content for you as well, do more thoughtful reflections, and to really digest what I'm reading so that I actually have something useful to say that will actually be useful for you to watch. So that will also hopefully bleed into that as well. And then as far as my writing goals, you ready for this one? I'm hoping to write 2 to 3 hours a week. That's the goal. I am trying to make space in my life to be responsible for other things. I will be so honest, a lot of my mental, emotional, and physical health fell by the wayside this year because I was trying so hard to meet these goals. So I want to be able to reprioritize my own health and take care of myself so that I am a better writer, reader, content creator, person overall. Intentionally taking care of my physical health, my mental health, my emotional health will help me to be more present in my life and hopefully make my creativity better and stronger throughout the year. As we go throughout the year, my idea is to find a block of time in my week that works for me to get those 2 to 3 hours of writing done and just make that time sacred. Not let anything interrupt it, not make plans, make sure that block of time every week is completely blocked out so that I'm not available. And I don't know what that block of time is going to be yet. I kind of don't know necessarily what my schedule is going to look like moving forward, so I'm not going to commit to any one block of time right now. The plan is just to say 2 to 3 hours a week, this has to get done. And as I continue to go throughout the year and figure out what block of time works best for me, then I will decide that that's the one that needs to be sacred, that needs to not be touched. But for now, it's just going to be 2 to 3 hours a week because you know what? The work will get done with that much time. It'll go slower, but I also think it means I will produce better work because I'm not rushing it. And if I end up writing more, great, but setting this lower goal also makes me feel more motivated to get to the writing and to get it done, because with the higher goals, I end up feeling more intimidated and daunted and struggle to meet the goal overall versus when I, again, slow down, take my time, and set lower goals. Makes it easier for me to meet. Something my dad always told me when I would get overwhelmed was, how do we eat an elephant? One bite at a time, which I know is an old phrase, but it's one that has been useful to revisit as I look at my new goals moving forward. I can't eat the whole elephant at once. It's just too much. I'm gonna get sick and it's gonna be frustrating and difficult again. So one bite at a time, only 2 to 3 hours a week. And I am hoping that with that consistency, I will be able to finish at least one project this year. We will see. That would be nice, but I'm not going to beat myself over the head with a very specific goal in that way. As far as projects I'm going to be working on, my plan is to finish that contemporary novel that I started in November. However long that takes is however long it takes, and whenever that one's done, I think my plan is to move on to the prequel novel that I need to write before I can begin writing my fantasy series that I tried to start writing earlier this year. So for now, that's the only goal. 2 to 3 hours a week, use those 2 to 3 hours to finish that contemporary coming of age novel, and then move on to the prequel novel whenever I can. With all these goals, I really don't know what that's going to look like for content creation. I still still plan to be active here and on Instagram, but I don't really know what that's going to look like. It will probably end up being that I just continue to do reading reviews and perhaps monthly writing updates if I have updates to give. If you have suggestions or ideas of videos you would like to see from me, I would love to hear them. I would love to be able to continue to grow as a content creator and to try new things. So if you have suggestions, would love to hear them, would be so open to any ideas that you have and would like to share. But yeah, for now, you can still expect to hear from me, but it will probably be a lot less, a lot more infrequently. But I do plan to continue posting videos and being active on Instagram because I have so appreciated this community and what this has given me as a way to hold myself accountable and just to see the progress that I've made and to give myself a chance to digest what I'm reading and go over what I'm learning as a writer. So we'll continue to do videos and Instagram stuff, but not really sure what that will look like. And yeah, we'll see. Stay tuned. I'll keep you posted. But yeah, that is all. That is a wrap for 2024, moving into 2025 with these new goals. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here this year. I really cannot express enough how significant this community has been to me over this year as I worked towards these goals, even as I didn't meet them. Just you all being here, cheering me on and being interested in what I have to say and being interested in how it's going has meant more than I can say. So yes, thank you for your support, for your kindness, and just for being a part of what I'm doing. But yes, that is all from me for this year. I am so excited to see what next year holds and so excited to just continue to talk to you guys about how it's going and the progress that's happening. Puppy is here to say goodbye. Hey, can you jump up? How about this? I will take the camera off the stand so he can say hello because he is the star of the show now. Can you say hello? Let's start 2025 with the dirtiest side-eye this dog has ever given me. Anyway, thank you for being here. I appreciate you all. Happy reading, happy writing, happy new year. I will chat with you all soon.